Hey friends and fam, it's John and it's time for the JMART CAST for Monday, September 5th. What's going on? How are ya? Happy Labor Day to everybody in the, Canada and the States. I don't know if Labor Day, they have it in other parts of the world, maybe Europe. Either way, thank you again for joining me. It's been a great week. It's my birthday week. September 3rd was the day. Luckily, the weather held out and it was nice and sunny up until the day of my birthday. And then yesterday, the 4th, and today, the 5th, has been just the gloomiest, grayest of the days of summer so far. And yeah, it's just been no fun waking up to almost a dark sky with, no hope, it seems like, of the sun peeking out through the clouds at all. But doesn't matter. We're not going to let that stop us, because today my family and I, my wife and my 2 kids, my 3-year-old, my 9-month-old, we're going to go to Cherry Beach. They have the Cherry Beach Sundays, although today's a Monday because it's a holiday. They're doing it on the holiday Monday instead of the Sunday, but Cherry Beach Sundays are happening. There's like a music festival that's very family friendly, available for anyone to bring, young children or any age to come and hang out and have a good time. It's going to be from 3 to 11. Obviously, we're not staying that late. We're just going to stay till I think 6 or 7 and then head back. And it's going to be a fun time. My kids, or like the youngest one's first music festival. The older one has been to another one when he was really young too. That same one, actually, that same Cherry Beach festival we went to when he was just a month old. So going back to it now that he's a 3-year-old. So that's been my week. Oh yeah, and then I was going to share that for my birthday, I got a tushy, right? You know what that is? It's like this bidet thing that sprays water at your bum. So you don't have to wipe with a paper towel anymore. You can just use the bidet and get the job done. It's funny, ever since I got that thing, I've just been hammered with like nonstop tushy advertisements on everything that I go to. It's like I already bought it. Stop. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'd rather get that than get some other bullshit advertisement, because at least I know I'm not being like manipulated to buy some shit I don't need. Although probably happened with the tushy to begin with. But it's been fun having it. I got the, the one that lets you hook up the warm water. Like the original one they had was only cold water, and the new upgrades they've made, one thing has been to add the warm water in addition to the cold, so that you're not just spraying your butt with like ice cold water. I guess it matters more so in the winter time. In the summertime, it's not a big deal, but yeah, it's probably might be a harsh way to wake up having cold water sprayed up there. Anyways, it took me a second to install it. It was like leaking some water and everything. I had to get like the little tape, whatever it's called, plumber's tape, I guess, to make sure the leak was stopped and it would work fine. And then once I got it going, it was working perfectly. Let's see, what else is happening this week? Let's see, I did jujitsu twice this week, actually 3 times, 2 classes and 1 open mat. Open mat was yesterday. Got a lot of practice in. I feel really good about where my game's at the open mat. I went against a couple of higher belts, 1 black belt, 1 purple belt, and it was really good. They were like, I guess, maybe going easier on me, and I was able to be competitive. There's 1 black belt that I went against, and this guy was just brutal. I felt like a little child against him. He was just like, he would just like sit on his butt, wait for me to come closer to him, and then just grab my collar and start like doing these things. And I'm not even aware of what he's doing. Like, I can't even describe it. That's how, like, I don't know, advanced his techniques are. That like, yeah, I feel like a white belt again. Like in the beginning when I was a white belt and I would go against like just 1 higher belt, the blue belt, the things that they were doing to me, I had no idea, and I was just like floundering. But as I got a little bit more experience, a little bit more skill, then I could do some of that to a new white belt. So they had that same feeling. And then when I went against this guy, I was reminded of what that was like to experience that again, where someone can handle you in such a, I don't know, effective way that physically you just feel like you can't accomplish anything. Anything you do, he can parry and have a perfect response to, get you. Like, yeah, he tacked me a couple of times, and then I was just like trying to stay away from him, but it wasn't working that well. Anyways, I'm going to switch to go to my Twitter account and share a couple of the posts I made that I thought were interesting. First couple were just responses to some people. So there's one by an account that I follow, Joey Tweets. He's one of the hosts of the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast, and he was actually one of the guests that I had a while back. Definitely recommend checking out the episodes I did with him, or just the one episode I did an interview with him. And he was just posting a video of himself deadlifting 310 pounds from like maybe a couple weeks ago. And he's like hoping to bring his deadlift up to 400 pounds. So up from 310 to 400. And he was just looking for some, I guess, guidance on what his technique could look like to get to 400 pounds to reach his goal. And so I just took a look at the video he posted, and then my major kind of response to him was that when I saw the video, you could see that his setup was mostly good. He had a really good flat neutral back as he was going to deadlift the weight up, but then from the back, from his shoulders to the top of his head, he really would extend and crank his neck back as hard as he could during the deadlift part, so that he has basically almost like a 90-degree kink from his neck, extending the head backwards. And so my response to that was that when I see that, I'm guessing that he's losing a lot of power in the legs from extending his neck so excessively. And so I always queue up clients in a case like this is to try to keep their neck neutral in line with the rest of the back. But then if they still want to have like a target to look up, I say look up with the eyes only, not extending the neck. And then that way, you're not going to be losing the power from the legs. And then interestingly, he responded. He said it was good advice. He's just trying to ask about the mechanism of what causes him to lose the power in his legs from extending the neck. And then my response was to tell it to him through an analogy. So through an analogy, you can think of the spine as like a chassis, like a car chassis, right? Like you have the chassis and then you have the engine attached to the chassis. So the spine itself is the chassis, and then the hips and the shoulders are kind of like the motors or the engines that generate power. Now, in order to generate the maximum amount of power through your engines or motors, those should be attached to a straight, stiff, organized spine or chassis, as opposed to like what I said was a janky, bent up, crooked one. Right? Organize your spine or your chassis in the most optimal structure before lifting, and then you won't lose power. And then I also linked to a video from Kelly Starrett, who's a really great physiotherapist, well-known, world-famous coach who's worked with many professional athletes, many world record holders, like people who are Olympic athletes, Olympic gold medalists. And he's got a great video where he demonstrates this. The video itself here, I'll pull up the... I'll pull up the title of the I'll pull up the video, and the title of the video is Kelly Starrett Mobility WOD Principles Spinal Integrity. It's a short 4-minute video where he talks about how spinal integrity is very important for generating power through your shoulders and your hips. And he has a really cool demonstration where he shows that when you organize your spine optimally in a neutral, and then you have your arm out, then somebody who's trying to bend your arm would have like an absolute hard time to be able to do anything, like to bend your arm from the elbow. Would not be able to, as long as your neck or spine is organized in a fully neutral way all the way from top to bottom. But then when he asks the person who he's demoing with to extend their neck backwards while the rest of the spine is still neutral, but just the neck has that kink, just like what the person was doing when they're doing their deadlift demo. When you kink your neck backwards and then he tries to bend the person's arm from the elbow, he has a very easy time doing so. It's because just the person's no longer able to generate the same power from like the core out towards the arms through the shoulder to the arm, and then they're not able to hold that position and prevent their arm from being bent. It's a very cool demonstration. I highly recommend checking out the video. Again, the title of the video is Kelly Starrett Mobility WOD Principles spinal integrity, watch the demo and find somebody you can do it with, because it's cool. Let's see what else. Another post I had on Twitter this week was this one. I said, the coefficient of static friction is greater than the coefficient of kinetic friction. This is like a bit nerdy, a bit brainy. It's like a physics concept, I guess, right? You can think of like a box on the ground. The coefficient of static friction is like the amount of force that's preventing that box from moving anywhere, which you have to overcome when you're pushing it in order to get it to move. And then the static friction, the coefficient of static, that was the coefficient of static friction. And then the kinetic friction, the coefficient of kinetic friction is the amount of force that is required to overcome in order to keep the box moving once you've got it going. And generally speaking, in almost all situations, the force for kinetic friction is always less than the static friction. And there's many explanations for why that is. I won't get into it now, but I think that's a concept in general that applies on a micro scale, like, when we're talking about just something as so small as like a box, on the ground and getting it to move and keeping it moving it. But it also applies, I think, generally to life as well. So that was the kind of the tweet. That's what it was about. So again, I'll go back to the tweet. It's the coefficient of static friction is greater than the coefficient of kinetic friction. It's hard to get moving, but once you do, it's easier to keep moving than to stop and start again. Get over the initial hump by doing something you enjoy. Lift, yoga, run, swim, martial arts, anything. There's honestly so many options. So that was the tweet, and then it got a good response. And then one person was asking, is lifting weights for an hour 4 times a week enough? Also, I go on a few 15 to 20 minute walks per week as well. So then my response to that is, yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, the question is not that clear in terms of like enough for what, right? Like you could have strength goals, you can have hypertrophy or muscle size increase goals. But either way, my response is for 4 1 hour blocks, 4 times a week is plenty of time for both strength and muscle size increase goals. So that's great. And then in addition to doing, to that, doing 15 to 20 minute walks, multiple ones throughout the week is great as well. Those are you can think of them as movement snacks to, just revitalize the body, pump some blood through it, and just make it feel good. All right, let's do a quick little Bitcoin update, and then I'm going to be done for the day. I just got a short little break while the wife's taking out the kids. So I'm home alone, and I have the opportunity to do this. So let's start with the Bitcoin update. We're on block height 752,739. One Bitcoin is trading for $19,786 and $1 will buy you 5,555 sats or satoshis, which are the smallest subunit of one Bitcoin. One Bitcoin can be subdivided into 100 million satoshis or sats. If you want to buy some sats or Bitcoin and you live in Canada, I recommend you use, Shakepay. Shakepay is a good Canadian exchange. They are KYC, which stands for Know Your Customer, which means you have to provide information about your identity to them in order to exchange your fiat dollars for Bitcoin. There are other ways of doing it where it's non-KYC, where you can buy Bitcoin without the person who you're buying or the entity you are buying from knowing your personal private details. But if you don't mind the KYC option, then Shakepay is a good way of doing it. And I have a referral link that you can use in the description for this podcast episode. So check it out if you want to. Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin. This is a really cool thread that somebody wrote out that I'd like to share to give some perspective. So this account on Twitter is at ROBUSTUS at Robustus, I guess. The person's name is Dan McCardle. He says Bitcoin is up 200,000% in the last 10 years. Yeah, it's crazy to think about that, eh? From when it was first like traded for money to where it is now, it's 200,000%. To hold it for that period, though, you had to not sell a 10-bagger. I think a 10-bagger is a phrase that's used to mean how much, like $1 million? Let me look that up. Okay, I looked it up. It says a 10-bagger is an investment that appreciates in value 10 times its initial purchase price. Okay, so it's only just 10xing. I mean, I shouldn't say only because things rarely ever 10 times something in value, but it does happen. And then not sell 100 baggers, so something that would increase in value 100 times. Yeah, because it did 200%, right? 200,000%. Insane to even think about, right? Because that's like, what, 2,000x? Anyways, not fall for a scam. You would have to not fall for a scam. Yeah, there's lots of scams around as well, right? Because it's like, well, there's all these alternative coins you can get invested into, right? And then those go to zero while Bitcoin's going up. And then you would also have to not get hacked. Yeah, that's a big one too, right? I don't know how. Actually, I don't know how many people who have used Bitcoin have gotten hacked, and like the exchanges have gotten hacked. But people who hold their coins, I've never heard of people actually who hold their own Bitcoin get hacked. But who knows? So I'm sure it exists and it's happened. I just haven't heard of it. All right, so I'm going to go through his thread, like of all the things that you would have to do and that you would have to get through in 10 years to like experience this 200,000% increase in value or 2,000x increase. Let's see. You would not have your coins on one of the 50. Yeah, you would have to not have your coins on one of the 50% of exchanges that ended catastrophically before 2015. Yeah, so there's a lot of exchanges that you could, exchange your fiat dollars for Bitcoin for. But then I always say get your Bitcoin off of exchanges into your own custody, because if you don't, then something could happen to that exchange, and then they're a counterparty risk. And in 2015, there are a lot of these exchanges that, closed, and people who had their money on the exchanges never got it back. You would have to not trade in your Bitcoin gains from 2011 bull run for gold in 2012, which was the worst trade in human history, ? Okay, I don't actually know what happened to gold in 2012, but I do know in 2011, like that was like the first bull run that Bitcoin had, that I think it went to like $10. Let me check that real quick. Okay, it says it went from $1 to like $30. Holy shit. Yeah, so it did all that, but then the price went back down to like almost like $2 again after being up to 30. So you would have thought maybe it's better to take your money out and put it into gold, but gold did nothing in 2012. But if you look at Bitcoin, it actually went from from 2 up to like maybe 4 or 5, and then it made it all the way up into the teens. So there you go. That would have been a bad trade as well. And then he says another thing you would have had to avoid is not to think that you missed the bus in 2010 and 2011, because there's so much more to go. You would have to not have your coins in one of the many web wallet services that ended catastrophically. Again, these services are ways of giving custody to somebody else rather than taking it yourself. So if you take it yourself, you're generally safe. If you give it to somebody else, you're taking on a counterparty risk, which is the whole reason why Bitcoin exists. Like with regular money, with fiat money, we have this counterparty risk with like the banks or somebody else, because it's always like this debt system, right? There's a debt system where whatever money you have, if it's your asset, it's somebody else's liability. That's how it works. But with Bitcoin and with gold, how it used to be is that whoever is the owner of that is the bearer. It's a bearer asset, meaning that there's just one person holding it. They have the asset, and there's no counterparty risk where it's somebody else that's a liability too. What else? You would have to not have your coins on some legit business service that turned out to be a Ponzi due to like mismanagement. right? That happened recently with like that Celsius company, which was giving people interest on people putting Bitcoin in their custody. And it turns out that they were taking people's Bitcoin and mismanaging it in a certain way where they were like adding to a Ponzi scheme, and then boom, they went bankrupt, and none of the people who put money into this service got it back. You would have to not forget your coins, forget your paper wallets, or lose your keys. Oh yeah, people used to just keep their keys on paper instead of like the 12-word phrase. They would actually have the secret number, the 256 character number. They would have that, so that imagine having that like and losing it. That would suck. What else? You have to not be in it only for the tech, causing you to spend 80,000 Bitcoin on pizza in 2010, hodling nothing. Yeah, this is actually a funny story where this is actually the first transaction for a physical object in reality where Bitcoin was spent on something, and it was for a pizza, and somebody spent 80,000 Bitcoin for this pizza in 2010. And now that 80,000 Bitcoin is worth way more, right? So like, can you imagine being the person who did that? You'd have to not listen to the media, not listen to academia, not listen to politicians, not listen to financial experts in quotes, and probably not listen to your friends and family either. Yeah, the whole way up, like all these entities have said that Bitcoin's dead, it's a scam, it's only used by people who are trying to break the law, by people who are trying to money launder or buy drugs and all, trying to mislabel it for something other than like, a censorship resistant, open and permissionless form of money. Okay, he's actually got a list of over 30 things that could be major pitfalls in the last 10 years in actually seeing this 200,000% increase in price of Bitcoin. So I'm just going to focus on a couple of the major ones here, and the rest can be read later if you so choose to. But one of the important ones here says you would have had to not freak out during the 2016-17 fork wars and sell your coins. So yeah, that's a major thing that happened to me in that year when I was like trying to get into Bitcoin, and then I heard about these fork wars happening, and I was like, I can't get into this. I have no idea what's going on, and now I can't be learning about two different Bitcoin. I thought one was going to be enough, and so that really screwed me over, and I never got into it. Another thing, he says, you had to have to not get depressed and sell during one of the 4 bear markets when Bitcoin was down 80% plus for months and just sat there. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're going through now. It's not quite 80%. I think it's like 70%, but still, it's just, went all the way up to nearly 70,000. Now it's been around 20,000 for a long time. So you have to have your conviction, and you have to get your conviction through learning more about it, I guess. And then the last thing I'll share is that you'd have to not overtrade and get nailed by an ugly tax situation. Yeah, the way that the rules are on Bitcoin now is every time you make some sort of transaction, then it has to be recorded for capital gains or capital losses, whichever way you're going, depending on when you first got it, right? And so that makes it so that if you're over trading a lot, you're going to be, caught with a lot of like paperwork, first of all, you have to do, but also a lot of, if you made a bunch of money, then you have to, include that as part of your tax filing. So that's not a good place to be. It's better to just buy and hold for a long period of time. And then that way you will minimize the taxes you have to pay, and will make it a more simpler situation as well. Anyway, I've babbled on for too long. Thank you again, friends and family, for joining me on yet another episode of the JMART Cast. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something. Appreciate you all. Thank you for doing any rating for the podcast that you've done, whether it be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or both. Thank you for sharing the episodes as much as you can with friends and family who are interested in listening. That's it. As always, stay active, be grateful. J-Mart out.